This episode of Angles is brought to you by Richmond Vona Personal Injury Attorneys. Expect high-level communication, transparency, and cutting-edge technology to keep your case moving. Expect a legal team that's laser-focused and moves fast to get the results you deserve. When the unexpected happens, expect Richmond Vona. Learn more at richmondvona.com, 192 Seneca Street, Buffalo, New York. Welcome to Angles, the podcast where we dig into the stories behind impactful people and explore the sharp turns, daily decisions, and defining moments that shape how they got to where they are and how they keep moving forward. I'm John Richmond, and every week I sit down with guests who are building bold, meaningful lives and careers in Buffalo and beyond. If you enjoy these conversations, please hit follow, subscribe, drop a comment, or share the episode. It's a simple way to help us grow with the community and keep these stories coming. Today on Angles, we're joined by Brandon Bieron, a U.S. Army Ranger who brings battlefield lessons to the business world. Now president of Reimer Home Services, Brandon shares how his leadership style, rooted in transparency, accountability, and investing in people, shapes a culture where character comes first. Brandon's commitment to reliability, integrity, and service defines his approach. Get ready for a conversation that shows how a Ranger's ethos transforms a company and the community it serves. All right, so I'm happy to be joined by Brandon Bieron. I'm super excited to talk to you today. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me, John.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. You know, obviously we met through the American Cancer Society, which we'll definitely talk about. But you know, there's a lot to your story, which when I learned about it, I was like, oh man, I got to get this guy on here and talk about him. I know you're currently the president of Reimer Home Services, but you have a very interesting journey that maybe is a little different than most people who've gotten to your position. Would you mind just kind of talking to me about how you kind of like where your journey has taken you and kind of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Buffalo, New York originally. Grew up in Kenmore, and 9/11 was a pretty impactful moment for me. Yeah, I think as it was for everybody, but we watched everything. I was in eighth grade at the time. Watched everything go on at school, and obviously horrifying day, extremely tragic. But when I got home that day, my dad was in the National Guard, so he was packed up, ready to go, and he left the next day to go down to New York City. Spent a little over a month and a half down there around the World Trade Centers, just pulling security, kind of cordon offing the area, and so that was extremely impactful. And then, fast forward to my junior year of high school, he deployed to Iraq for 14 months. So he missed a lot of my junior year, some of my senior year, and when he was gone, I was thinking to myself, here's a guy who has a family. He's got four kids. What is he doing going over there when there's a bunch of able-bodied folks with a whole lot less to lose? And that kind of sparked my interest in the military. I'd always been interested in the military a little bit. So I go off to Canisius College to study political science, thinking about pre-law, and really got into the political scene here locally. Ended up working for Assemblywoman Jane Corwin as the field director for her state assembly campaign, and then came on. I think I was the youngest state assembly staffer at the time. I was 19 years old, working in the district office locally in Clarence, and it's like, all right, like this feels great. Maybe I'll go do a congressional internship and stay in the political theater, and had a congressional internship lined up that summer through some friends who worked for Congressman Reynolds at the time, and I just kind of got compelled to go back into thinking about the military and service. And that summer, instead of going to DC for this congressional internship, I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to do a 10-week boot camp, essentially, so that I could join the ROTC program at Canisius College. So, one of the best decisions I've ever made. I still have a lot of friends. I'm going to visit one in DC with my family this weekend. So some of my closest friends are still from the ROTC program. And that really led me to how I started my professional career. So graduated in 2010 from Canisius, and that November went off to Fort Benning, Georgia for infantry officer basic course. And, that was the beginning of my military journey. Spent about a year there going through, you know, airborne school. After I went to Ranger school the first time, which is, I always compare it for folks. It's like an accountant. They have to you got to get your CPA, I feel like, in a lot of ways, or for, an attorney, like you have to pass the bar exam. Like it's cool to go to law school, but it's more important, I think, to pass the bar exam.
Yeah.
And so I went to Ranger school the first time, and I got dropped for one of the physical events. A pretty humbling experience. I hadn't failed anything in a really long time, and it was pretty embarrassing to show up to my first unit. As an infantry officer, not having a Ranger tab. A lot of comments from the senior guys, the older guys who had been around for a little bit. Jokes, hey, what happened, this and that. But I had a great mentor at the 10th Mountain Division at the time, Major Matt Hardman, who kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, look, I don't know what happened, but my goal is to try to get you back down there to go back through." And uh, about 4 months after arriving at Fort Drum, went back down to Fort Benning, did pre-Ranger down there, and then went straight through Ranger School, which is like the premier leadership school in the U.S. Army. And then after that, everything kind of just happened pretty quickly. Ended up deploying to Eastern Afghanistan with 10th Mountain as a platoon leader out to Ghazni province for a 9-month deployment. So it's gone January to September of 2013. Came back from that deployment and then went down to Georgia for some professional military schooling and had an opportunity to go do assessment and selection for Special Operations Unit, 75th Ranger Regiment. So did that. I'm not really sure how. As a kid who didn't really, I had failed Ranger school. I had all these setbacks, but ended up getting selected to serve in that unit, which in my mind is the elite, infantry unit in the entire world. So got to serve with some really incredible people, learned a ton, and then deployed with them in 2016 for 6 months. Went overseas and kind of kicked off operations against ISIS out in Eastern Afghanistan. Came back from that deployment, and my wife and I were, thinking like, hey, maybe we'll start a family, we'll have kids, and got stationed up in Alaska. So we took this 17-day road trip at the end of October across the country, up through the Canadian Rockies. It was like ice road truckers going through the Canadian Rockies at the time. Like we didn't see another vehicle for days. There was bison crossing the road, caribou. Truly an incredible experience, but showed up in Anchorage, Alaska, and found out I was deploying, that August. So I got back in September 2016, and then we ended up going back over to Eastern Afghanistan in August of 2017. And that deployment was extremely kinetic. We had, over a dozen guys get injured on that. A bunch of guys from our task force get killed. I had 2 guys personally who were under my command that ended up being killed in action, and that started to take a toll on my wife a little bit. I think just the realities of what it would mean to continue. My plan was to go back to the 75th, serve there, definitely do more deployments. But she kind of drew a line, and I'm happy about that. She just, hey, if you want to have kids, you want to start a family, maybe we look at doing something outside of the military. And so ended up transitioning out of the military, going to the University of Pittsburgh for my MBA. I joke with people all the time. I probably could not do long division, when I was up on a mountaintop in Afghanistan. So obviously wanted to challenge myself and concentrated in finance when I was at business school. Felt like I needed to fill some of these gaps to be ready for the business world. And, in that timeline too, wife gets pregnant second semester, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm gonna be a dad. I'm gonna be unemployed. This sounds like doesn't sound like the right plan. So Ended up doing a 2-year MBA in 3 semesters. So took 21 credits my last semester. Had taken some summer courses that year as well. And we're both from Buffalo, so came back to Buffalo, got into the executive associate program at M&T Bank, and got to spend about 2.5 years there before coming over to Reimers to take on the role of president here.
Wow. I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about all that. I mean, like I've told you before, and I mean, we're incredibly lucky to have people like you who are willing to do that for our country. So obviously, thank you for that. And so I want to go back to something you said in the very beginning. We started talking about your career in the military. I think it's pretty powerful. You're talking about failing Ranger School the first time, and you never really had a setback like that. It sounded like, and it sounded like, which is amazing, that you had somebody who was there to kind of pick you up and encourage you to keep going. But that doesn't have, no matter how much somebody is trying to encourage you, it's not going to happen unless you have that inside you and you're willing to do it. Can you just sort of talk about maybe how you learned to deal with that setback and how you have learned since then to deal with setbacks or failures and kind of move on?
Yeah, I think it was a good lesson. Like before joining ROTC, I wouldn't say I was like the best student. Probably had my priorities mixed up with doing other things that college kids are doing.
Yeah.
Going to Chippewa, 3 nights a
Yeah.
week and having fun with my friends. But once I kind of made the decision to join ROTC and take the military route, it kind of switch flipped and got pretty serious about things. And I think I've always been somewhat competitive in nature, and I think it pulled it out of me a little bit more because I started to see that, hey, I could be pretty successful in this. Like I had some natural leadership attributes that I think were serving me pretty well. And so I hadn't failed anything in a long time. And going through that, you pretty much are prepping for that course for a year, and you're taking all these physical assessments beforehand just to get the opportunity to go there. So you've been vetted, probably 20 times before you even step foot in Ranger School. And so I go there, and it's like 106 degrees, Georgia heat, June 6th, 2011. And I can, you do push ups, sit ups, and then a 5 mile run. And immediately after the 5 mile run, you've got to knock out 6 chin ups. And the ranger instructor is standing, right in front of you, and your body can't sway, can't touch them. 6 perfect form chin ups. And they play some games too where, you do a rep, they don't count it. And,
Yeah.
and again, I think part of it's just to see, can this guy, is he mentally strong enough to get through? And that day, I probably did 13 perfect chin ups and only 5 counted. And I kind of hit physical failure and ended up getting dropped. And at the time, there wasn't enough like billets open to keep me down there to send me back through. So I had to go report into my first unit. And the only way I could describe it is, being going to law school, showing up to a law firm, and being like, yeah, I failed the bar. I've got to retake
Yeah.
it. It was kind of a you know a black spot on the resume. But so I think that just having to deal with that adversity of everybody, looking at you, we call it tab checking. They shake your hand and look at your shoulder, and you don't have a ranger tab there, and asking what happened, and you having to provide that context. That was pretty humbling. But for Major Hardman at the time to kind of say, like, hey, take the time to say, hey, what happened there? Like, how do you feel about going back? Do you want to go back? And the answer was, unequivocally yes. Like, I want to get back down there. I want to pass. This is something that I know I need to do. Um, it meant the world to just have somebody who's like, okay, hey, if that's what you want to do, like, I'll get you back there, and then here's the plan to get you back there. And I remember he was a scuba instructor at West Point, so he's very good in the water. I did not join the Navy because I'm not the best. I'm not the best in the water, and we did pool PT that day. I was absolutely smoked. Probably worked till 6:30 p.m. That night, just working on some projects up at the headquarters. And he's like, hey, tomorrow morning at 4:30 in the morning, you guys are going to take a Ranger PT test. If you pass it, we're going to send you back down. If not, you're that's probably your last chance. So knocked out the push-ups, the sit-ups, and then I came in at like 41 minutes on the run, and I had been running consistently 5 miles in like 36 minutes, 35 and a half minutes, and I come in across 41 minutes, and I'm just there's no way, like there's no way that it took me 41 minutes to run 5 miles. And he had made it a little over 5.5 mile run just to see what we would do mentally. Like we didn't have smart watches. We just had a old school watch with the timer on it. So like what are you gonna do when you're not at the finish line and your stopwatch is over the 40-minute time, the allotted time. And I remember I came back through, the instructor's like, he was a senior captain, so he was a little bit older than me, but he's like, hey, don't worry about it. Just like knock out the chin ups. Like, don't worry about it. Like, all right, and knocked out the chin ups, and then after they're like, yeah, you're going back. Like that was a 5.5 mile run. You're good to go, and um, so really really thankful for that. But I think it also taught me, how to approach those situations, because later on in the military, I had guys come through who also didn't have their Ranger tab, and being able to talk about it and talk about my experience, and one failure is not going to define you. It's how you pick yourself up and get back after it. That's what matters most. It's not how you start the race, it's how you finish it. Old cliche, kind of.
No, but it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's obviously. I think too. I mean, obviously, you don't become a ranger unless you're extremely mentally tough. But I also think it's amazing that you would do that with other people, like you said, who came through later on and tell them your story. Like a lot of guys don't want to tell that story, but it's important because then you can help other people through a similar situation. When I know I gotta imagine there's like a ton that goes into Ranger School, and I actually have some buddies who were SEALs, and I know there can be some fun
Well, like,
rivalry.
in Ranger School, it's 62 straight days. At Buds, you get the weekends off, which, I mean, come on, like
Yeah,
that's
I don't
easy.
know what
That's
they're
easy.
thinking. Yeah, I'm gonna tell them you said that's awesome. They'll laugh. But what do you think are some of the biggest lessons you learned in Ranger School that ultimately prepared you to be a platoon leader? Because I mean, again, I'm just imagining that you can only be as prepared. You can only be so prepared, right? And then you're going into combat, and that's a completely different story. But what do you think are like the biggest lessons you've learned in Ranger School that then prepared you to be a leader of men? In the most high stakes situation that anyone can imagine.
Yeah, I think a big thing about Ranger School, obviously you're sleep deprived, you're eating 2 meals a day. They're usually at like 2:30 in the morning and 5 in the morning. So there's a long period of time where you're not eating, and you're sleeping, anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes a night. So sleep deprivation is very real. But I think some of the lessons it teaches you is it, you're going to train, and the way you train and your mentality about how you go about things. So, old cliche too, like how you do anything is how you do everything. Like every single day there, the instructors are assessing you. So like how you're acting when you're not during, in patrol lanes, how you're acting when, because you rotate through leadership positions to be evaluated. So for most of the course, you're just a teammate, a course mate, trying to help the person who's in leadership being evaluated, get their go so they can go on to the next phase. And, I think it says a lot, like, in order to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower, you got to be a good teammate. Um, Setting high standards. There was a way they taught you to do something, and that is the way they wanted it done. They didn't want you to put your own flair on it, or try to like, oh, I know better, so I'm going to do this. So being able to understand the standards and uphold the standard, I think was really important. And then I think the last piece just about leadership is like presence matters, like where you're at, and taking that away, like putting your point at the going to the point of friction, like where does your team need you, like wherever like the biggest headache, the biggest pain point is, like that's where you should go to, and you should swarm to it as leader. You should get all your resources, and go to that and figure out, how you can lift that teammate up, how you can help that department, that section, whatever it is, overcome the challenge that they're facing.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. I mean, and like you said, you're being present, you're showing up, you're um, showing people you're there for them, you're there to help them, and then you're not asking them to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. I think, that's a powerful message. Obviously, then you go, like we said, you're platoon leader. Um, I can't even imagine what that's like, especially, you talked about, on one of your tours, or one of your deployments, I should say, people you served with, dying or getting seriously injured. Um, how do you stay calm and lead in those moments? And maybe how have you taken those experiences that you've had in those deployments and then worked them into now obviously a much different professional life?
Yeah, I think for for those deployments, and you played hockey, John, so again, go back to training. Like you train and you train and you train, and I was in for 8 years. I was in Afghanistan for a little over 20, 21, 22 months. But for the rest of the time, I was training like every single day. And I think in the moments when things aren't going right, maybe you're in a firefight, maybe somebody's injured, whatever the situation is, like you're gonna fall back on training. So, and who you are again, like how you're showing up to those training events, like how you're showing up in the moments that maybe, it feels kind of corny, like we're just a bunch of like grown men running around the woods of Georgia or Alaska or Fort Drum, New York, shooting fake guns at the time, and it seems a little silly, but how you train in those moments, it all comes out on the battlefield, on the playing field. So, um, I think staying calm in those moments, it was like, okay, like what's the process? What's the system? Like if there is process, like where am I in that process or in that system? And like what's the next step? And just always staying present of like what is the thing I need to be focusing on, and what's the next thing, and just kind of being task oriented at that time. Certainly helps. And I think moving out of the military and into the civilian sector, I've taken a lot of that with me as well. Of just, okay, like where does the team need me? There's a ton of priorities. There's always competing priorities. People have those every single day in their life. But how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? Like, all
Right.
right, what is the thing I need to do today? And like, let me complete that. Let me do it really well, and let me move on to the next thing, and not get overwhelmed by, when you take a step back and you look at the big picture, you're like, this is chaos.
Yep.
Like staying focused and kind of staying in that checklist is what's helped me along the way.
Yeah, that's helped me too. I had somebody tell me a while ago, it's pretty similar to what you just said. When you're feeling that anxiety, like there's so much going on and you're looking out at, like you said, the sea ahead, or maybe like a desert in this situation, put your head down, look at your feet and take the next step. Go back. What is the process here? What can I do to start making progress on whatever it is that's giving me anxiety or whatever like the priority is, and then just moving forward that way. Because you're right, like there's always so much going on, especially as you grow into leadership positions, and you're getting pulled in all these different directions. So, how long have you been at Reimer now?
I joined in August of 2022, so coming up on 3 years this summer.
Okay, and I know obviously you're the president there, and um, it's pretty amazing. I think the growth that Reimer's experienced. I know they've been around a really long time, but you guys are really involved in the community. I mean, you do a lot of great work. Can you just sort of talk about your transition into president at Reimer and kind of what your day to day is like, and kind of maybe some of your philosophies about leading your team these days.
Yeah, so yeah, Reimer's been around since 1921. Started out as just a heating business, and expanded into heating and cooling, and then about 15 years ago, expanded into plumbing, and then about a year and a half ago, we entered the electrical space. So it's pretty awesome. We're able to do everything that a customer needs us to do inside their home. But the transition, I think, what really compelled me to step into this role was, I had all that leadership experience in the military, all this organizational leadership experience, And at the bank, I had a team of about 4 or 5 that I was working on. I was a product team and, leading them. But I really missed being around just kind of salt of the earth people, genuine people. And you're absolutely going to get that in the trades every single day. So when the opportunity came around, I jumped all over it.
We'll be right back after a word from our partners.
After an accident, life can be scary, stressful, tricky. You need Richmond Bona to help navigate the process, because getting a life-changing settlement can not only take time, it can take an emotional toll. The team at Richmond Bona provides high levels of support through all the ins and outs, so you get the settlement you need and the new beginning you deserve.
When the unexpected happens,
expect Richmond Bona.
Now back to the conversation.
And the things I love about this organization is, from a leadership perspective, I get to make a difference in the technicians' lives, the employees' lives. So we've got a little over 200 employees across the state now, between Buffalo, Rochester, and Albany. And, being able to make a difference, helping them financially, helping them, if they have a 5-year plan of what they want to do, like maybe they come in as an apprentice, but they really want to get to a sales role, or they're an apprentice and they want to get to a lead installer role. Being able to work with them to develop, okay, like what's that roadmap look like? Like if you're here today and 5 years you want to be here, like let's sit down and talk through, like, what are the gates you have to hit in order to get here? What do I need from you? And then what do you need from me as your leader? Like, what resources, tools, training, coaching can I provide you to help you get there? So seeing those guys like find fulfillment and success in their professional lives, like that's amazing. I think it's also amazing that we're able to go out and help customers like who are usually having one of the worst days of the year, flooded basement, AC's not working on the hottest day of the year, furnace goes out when you bring a newborn home, whatever it is, being able to go out there and say like, hey, don't worry, like we're going to take care of you and we're going to fix your problem for you. And, the 5-star reviews we get, really make it worth it. And the guys have shown up in a lot of big ways. The blizzard that hit in 2022,
Oh, yeah.
We know obviously 911 shut down. All the other home services turned off their phones because they didn't want to pay for the marketing dollars that were going to come in through Google and everything else. We kept all of our advertising, all of our Google advertising going. We had technicians work Christmas Eve and Christmas. They were FaceTiming customers, walking them through how to restore heat or temporary heat in their homes. And the reviews we got after that, it's like, yeah, it made it all worth it. Like, did it cost us money? Like, yes. Was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. And then when you see the reviews of like, Reimer saved Christmas, or, my 87-year-old elderly neighbor came over and we called Reimer and they were able to get his boiler back up and working. Like his pipes would have froze. Like he could have had health problems had he not come over. Those make it worth it. And we got recognized by Governor Kathy Hochul with the Good Neighbor Award in January of that year, which was pretty awesome to see the technicians who kind of sacrificed their holiday weekend. Not like we were doing anything, right? We were all stuck indoors, couldn't really go anywhere, but to see them get recognized up on stage was pretty cool. So you get to make a difference in the employees' lives, the customers' lives, and then the community stuff that we've been able to do, whether it's with the American Cancer Society, the Buffalo Marathon, the Buffalo Zoo, Roswell Park. We found ways to really lean into the community and try to show up for the moments that matter for them. So I think it's the trifecta when it comes to like
it's
having
huge.
purpose.
I love that you're talking about that because, it's a lot of people or a lot of business leaders, I think, I don't know necessarily, they talk the talk. I'm not necessarily sure they walk the walk when it comes to client or customer service or an experience. And I like that resonates with me as well. Like, we're always trying to deliver the ultimate experience to somebody who's going through a terrible time. Ultimately, similar to what you're talking about, a really bad experience if they're injured. But more so, I think you would agree that you cannot deliver the ultimate client experience or even attempt to unless you have the best people.
Yeah, it really does come down to people. And I think when I think of like what are we looking for in employees, we're looking for like people of good character, people who are going to show up on time, people who say like do what they say they're going to do. Like those are the types of folks we're looking for. Like if you're coachable, like we want to bring you onto the team. I feel really strongly in the leadership team we have here that we can train somebody up, and obviously there's a huge shortage in tradespeople across the country, to include here in Western New York and throughout upstate New York. But we just want people of high character, and that's the one thing I know. Like when a Reimer technician comes into your home, like they're a good person, and that's what matters most.
And I think that's definitely the best way to do it. I mean, again, it's we honestly, you and I have never talked about this before, but that is that again, that rings true with me. It's as we've been building our business, it's like we need to focus on the right person, like the best people with the right structure, the right training. You can develop those people, and then you're able to do great things for them. And I think again, that's just so important. How would you? I mean, it obviously sounds amazing, but I guess how would you describe Reimer's internal culture? I mean, it sounds like a place where there's really high level communication, and they can come to you with problems, and you're willing to sit with them and like you said, like sketch out these journeys for them.
Yeah, I think internally the culture is really improved, and as the team's grown, we had about 63 employees when I started. We've got over 200 across the state. We've got locations that didn't exist. We've got Rochester and Albany now. Um, so I think the biggest compliment I get is when folks come to visit us, from outside the organization. They always talk about like how awesome the atmosphere and the culture is when they spend a day with us. So we might have folks from, throughout the country who want to learn something. So we might have folks from Massachusetts come up to learn what we're doing through, a network that we're a part of. And they come up and they're like, this is awesome. Like, how did you do this? And I think it comes down to, in order to set great culture, like you've played on elite teams, like I've been a part of elite organizations. There's high standards and like high expectations at those organizations, and we're not going to shy away from that. Like
Yeah.
if you want to come work and be a part of this team, like the expectations and the standards are high, but as leaders, we're going to provide every resource we have possible to help you meet those standards and expectations. And I think that's like the beautiful part. There's a balance there where people want to be a part of those organizations. The right people want to be a part of those organizations.
100%.
And I think they take more pride in all right, hey, we do things differently, but we do it the right way. So as we've built out the team, we've really focused on culture fits, and we've had some folks who performed at a very high level, and I think that's one of the tougher leadership decisions is, all right, this person's performing at a very high level, but they're not a cultural fit. And they're bringing some of the team down with them and having to part ways with them. Those are very difficult decisions, as is any termination. But when you're doing it for a cultural fit, what I've seen is you usually spend more time trying to get them to change to fit the culture, and you're expending all these resources on them when they don't want to be a part of that culture, that organization. And it doesn't mean they're not a fit for a different company, here in Western New York, and they often leave and find employment really fast, which is a great thing about the trades. But, for us, we've got something really special here, and we're very protective of it. And I think the guys and gals who work here would agree that, it's a pretty awesome place to work.
Yeah. And it's like that saying, right? Like in a lot of companies, what ends up happening or traditionally is the leaders spend 80% of their time on the people who actually don't even want to be there, who don't want to raise up to those standards of excellence, and only 20% of the time on the people who really do want to be there. And it really should be flipped, So I think that's great that you guys do that.
We talk about that all the time because it's like, hey, we've got this guy who's struggling, who is like an incredible culture fit, wonderful human being, like shows up on time, like wants to be coached. like we need to invest all the time and resources into those folks and not into the folks who we're trying to convince that, hey, like this is the way we should do something, or, this is the culture we're trying to set, and like you should buy into it as well. We've got to spend less time on those folks and more time on the folks, like you said, who want to be here and like have that desire to be better.
That's spot on. And I think, that's something that, we always try to communicate to people, especially at our firm. Sounds like you're doing the same. Is like, look, if you're a good person, if you're a good teammate, and you're somebody who wants to go above and beyond, you want to do a great job, you just need help, we will put all of our time, energy, and resources into it. Other team members will help you get there. And yeah, I'll give you a lot of credit too, because I know that's something as like a business owner, as a leader, people really struggle with. And that's unfortunately parting ways with people who are highly productive, who generate a lot of revenue, but just are bringing other people down with their attitude, or, resisting at every turn. So that's a hats off to you, man. I'm not just saying that. Like that's a tough decision to make, but it has to be made.
Yeah, and I think some of it goes back to my time at the Ranger Regiment, where they, every day was assessment and selection. Like you every day you showed up and you're like, man, I am not as good as the rest of the people here, but everyone felt that way. So we were all trying to like chase the rabbit of excellence and be better. And if you weren't, they sent you off back into Big Army. And a lot of those folks went off into Big Army and did amazing things, right? And they were a good culture fit. They just weren't a good culture fit for the regiment. And we've kind of adopted that approach too. And every time we've made one of those decisions, it's been like addition through subtraction. It's incredible to watch how the rest of the team kind of steps up and fills the voids. And, folks who maybe were sitting, further down the batting order or on the bench, like they're stepping up and like kind of carrying the torch, and you get to see them, kind of step into the spotlight and see their careers take off. And like, man, I should have made that decision sooner. But yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys obviously are really value driven. What are kind of like the values or the core values that are most important to you guys at Reimer?
Yeah. So, I mean, like our core values, reliability, we want to be there for the community, be there for our customers, be there for our employees. Transparency. I think, dealing with contractors or folks in your home, sometimes there's a little ambiguity around like the scope of work, what the price is going to be. We try to be as transparent as possible with, hey, here's the scope of work, here's the price. Especially on the HVAC side, if we make a mistake, we're going to eat the cost, because the price you see today is the price you're going to pay when we're done with the job. So transparency, reliability, knowledgeable. We train, both soft skills training, because how we communicate with the customer is really important. There's a lot of stuff that we do that's extremely technical. So we have technical training once a week. We have soft skills training once a week. And that's so we can take the technical stuff that we're learning and be able to communicate it in a way that the customer is like, okay, I feel empowered because I know more about my HVAC system. I know more about my plumbing system than I did before you came here. And now when we're going over options, they're empowered to make the decision that's best for them and their family. And so I think that's really, really important. And then, obviously integrity is a big one. We send a lot of guys off into customers' homes. Managers, leaders aren't there in the home with them. They can't see everything that's going on. Customers trust us to come into their homes. So doing the right thing when nobody's looking is extremely important.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously, again, you talked about it a little bit, but, we met as we're both through the American Cancer Society. We're both advisory board members, but you actually are the leader of us volunteers on the board. Can you talk about a little bit how you got involved with ACS, and then just speak a little bit more about why it is that Reimer and you personally feel that it's so important to be involved in these great community organizations?
Yeah. The answers to those kind of all blend together. So in 2022, I showed up to Reimer, and I knew we wanted to get involved with the community organization. I just didn't know which one, and I was like, all right, the best way to do this is just ask the team, like, what are the things that matter most to you? And some folks in my management team had a mother at the time who was actually fighting breast cancer. We had other folks in the company who either were in the same boat, had somebody that was diagnosed with breast cancer and beat it, or unfortunately had passed away. And yeah, you just realized like, wow, like breast cancer really touches a lot more people than maybe I was privy to. So we had reached out to our marketing team and just said like, hey, we really want to get involved with an organization that supports, the fight against breast cancer. And obviously Making Strides Against Breast Cancer is the premier event for that. So they had connected us with Melanie at the American Cancer Society, and we just started talking through what a partnership would look like. At the time, we were ready to make this our premier sponsorship in Buffalo, and the presenting sponsor for Making Strides had just dropped out that year, so it was like serendipitous that we were reaching out to them. They had this event that was opened up. So in 2023 was the first year we were the presenting sponsors for Making Strides. And then as we opened our Rochester and Albany locations, we're like, okay, like we want to get involved in Making Strides everywhere that Reimer is. So, Rochester, Albany came in as some sort of level ship sponsorship with them. And then Making Strides just is involved in so many community events, American Cancer Society is involved with so many community events throughout the year. That is, we're like, all right, we're going to be very community driven and showing up for the moments that matter. They just had a list of community events that made sense to be a part of. So we started to get really involved with ACS. And then it was probably about 6 months ago, Jill Feckler had reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to join the board? We think you'd be a great addition. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like, I didn't really know what that means. Probably similar to you and Chris Keller and some of the other folks on the board. But I'm like, I believe in the mission. I believe in the cause. Like whatever I can do to help. And it's been a great honor to be there and to just help out however you can. I don't think people realize what the American Cancer Society, what they provide, whether it's through, helping to fund grants and research, whether it's at Roswell Park or other universities and foundations, the care, some of the care that they provide. So, they're providing transportation on a daily basis for cancer patients throughout Western New York. They're providing lodging out of Hope Lodge in Rochester, and providing that transportation if they're at Hope Lodge to, facilities in Rochester or Roswell Park down here in Buffalo. So just a wonderful organization, and, really proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Likewise. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. And I will say too, obviously you and I and the other people on the board, we're volunteers trying to help any way we can. The people that, we interact with who actually are employed by ACS are incredible people.
Absolutely.
Who have been doing this a long time. And I agree that, if anybody ever wants to learn more, please go to the ACS website, and you can always reach out to one of us or anybody at ACS and learn more about how it's actually, the money is coming back to Buffalo. It's not just going into some big national organization and never helping here. It's helping people in our community. So it really is an amazing organization. I want to go back to something you said. It struck me. So I grew up, my dad was a brick mason. So I grew up with guys in the trades. I love the guys in the trades, the salt of the earth, blue collar guys. Even now in our business, most of the people we represent are blue collar. Can you talk about kind of, this is what I'm saying basically, I think people don't understand enough about the blue collar trades. Can you kind of talk about maybe some things you wish people knew about the people who work for you and just kind of like the tradesmen in general?
Yeah, I think, growing up, my dad was a mechanic, very blue collar. And I understand why, like being a parent now, I understand like the conceptually, pushing folks towards education and, college and graduate school and all that. But there's a lot of really well-paying jobs in the trades, and I think that is overlooked, and it's also it's a necessity. Like
Yeah.
AI is not going to replace plumbers. AI is not going to replace HVAC technicians, or definitely not going to replace electricians. So these are critical needs that our communities need. And I think for a really long time, there was this cloud cast over the trades, and people thought less of tradespeople and blue collar workers. And now there's a shortage across the country.
Yep.
So what we're really trying to do here at Reimer is, you don't need trades experience to apply for a job here. Like, we're very confident that we can train you and get you ready. We talked about the attributes that we're looking for, but some of our best hires over the last year are folks who had never turned a wrench, their entire life. But we kind of paint a picture of, like, this is what the future could look like, for you, for your family. You can have financial stability. You don't have to worry about, losing your job to AI or it being outsourced to another country. So there's a little bit of protection there for them. And so I think just educating people, like bringing respect back to the trades, is a thing we talk about quite a bit. Of, you go out and you meet the guys here, you talk to them, they're just like normal people, like they're awesome folks. Like, they're smart, they're articulate, they're some of the hardest workers I know, and they would do anything for you. They have like no ulterior motives, and the fact that they're going into some pretty nasty situations at times.
Oh yeah.
Customers who are irate because their AC is not working when it's 95. I'm like, man, I didn't even have AC when I was a kid. I thought it was a luxury. But you have that. You have folks whose basement's flooded or they have a sewage backup, and these guys are putting themselves in some situations that a lot of folks probably wouldn't, just to help the customer, help the community. And their work has meaning, and that's something we're always trying to highlight for them. You showing up on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day in 2022, like giving up some of your time, like without a doubt, those guys saved lives. Like without a doubt. Like they helped some elderly folks like get heat restored, that had they not, like, that could have been a pretty bad situation. And also just the property damage from frozen pipes and other things. That their work has a ton of meaning and value.
For sure. And you're right? It's the AC doesn't go out when it's 65. It goes out when it's 85, and the heat doesn't go out, or the heat only goes out when it's 20 degrees out. Like, that's
Absolutely.
just how it goes.
Yeah.
That stuff can be dangerous. So, I mean, you have all these great people. You have your system for hiring them, for looking for really people who share your values and share in your mission. But you have been growing very quickly, which is amazing. But I know that there's a lot of challenges with that. How do you guys kind of control growth and grow into new markets? I think that sometimes from the outside, it just looks like, oh, wow, this company's growing. That's great. But there's just so much that goes behind that. Kind of, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, it's always going to come back to people, like getting the right leaders in place. My general manager out in Rochester, Sean Looney, Buffalo kid, actually got to serve with him at 75th. So we had crossed paths in the military, and was able to, touch base, connect with him and talk to him about this opportunity. And he's been absolutely crushing it in Rochester. Chris Bouchard's a Marine infantry officer. He's running the Albany location. So finding these great leaders who maybe they don't know much about the trades, but we can find the trade expertise. There's plenty of folks who have that trade knowledge, and who are looking for, supervisor positions or manager positions. So we've really focused in on, like, who are the key leaders we need, and making sure that, like, they're in it for the right reasons. They're in it to take care of people, take care of customers, be good stewards in the community, and then foster this culture of, all right, hey, like, as a leader, my job is to find ways to support you and give you the resources that you need. And I may not know how to do any of that as the leader, but I will move heaven and earth to make sure that I get you what you need and when you need it. So I think a lot of our growth can just come back to like the leadership team having that mindset, taking care of people. I do think the trades for a long time, tradespeople, weren't treated well by leadership, by managers. We're trying to change that. We also don't want to be a place where people just punch the clock. Like we want to be a place where it's like I hang out with these people on the weekends. Our kids know one another. Like make it more of a tight knit community. Um, and I think that's what we have going across the state.
Great. I got to imagine you've learned a lot from the people who work for you. I learn a lot from our teammates, and I like to think that I always tell them like it's my job to like go out and learn more, learn how to be a better leader, and come back and show up for you. But oftentimes I learn a lot just from them. What do you think are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from the people who work for you that have helped shape like your leadership style today?
Yeah, I think I guess I'd call myself a pace setter in terms of like building the urgency, pushing the organization forward. Like, hey, can we do one more? It's 90 degrees out. I know it's 11 p.m., but like, can we get to that? Can we get to that customer because they need us? And like pushing the team a little bit. I think good feedback I've gotten from the team, bottom up, is just like knowing how to like harness that a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is good. Like I need that. But I also think we complement each other well. And I think the other thing that's really important too, just as a leader, is to create safe spaces with the folks that work directly for you. So, we can have like pretty heated conversations or like get emotional. I want people to do that. I don't want them to like harness their emotions in and like not be their authentic self. Like if you're frustrated, like just let it out, right? Like let's get it out in the open and like let's work through it, because we're going to come up with a better solution. So what I've really loved is, I might have an idea or an opportunity in my head, share it with those guys, and they might come back and be like, "Hey, this is what you want to do, like, but here's how I would recommend doing it." And you're like, "Oh yeah, like that's way better than
Yeah.
what I was thinking. So like, let's do that." And I think over the last couple of years, like the team's really stepped up and embraced that like growth mindset, and they're all thinking a little bit differently now, which is nice to see, because we had a lot of folks who had a lot of technical experience, but not a lot of not a lot of leadership experience. So over the last 2 years, it's been a lot of coaching, mentoring them on just like how to be great leaders, because you know how to answer the technical questions, but like what does it mean to like take care of people? What does it mean to, the burden of leadership? Like you're going to be available to them 24/7, 7 days a week, essentially. Because like if they're calling you, like they need something from you, and like you're it. Like you're the person that they need to hear from. So I think that's been good. So like bottom up feedback, creating safe spaces for them, and really asking them like pressure test it, like push back. Don't just be yes men or yes women. Like push back on me and let me know if I'm off base here. And I bet we're going to come up with something a lot better.
It's pretty amazing. I think you'd agree. Once people realize, wow, he's not kidding. Like I really can push back. I really can give this feedback. We could have these tough conversations. We come up with a solution. We walk out and it's like, we just keep moving on and it's all good. And he actually appreciates that and wants that radical candor. It's amazing to see them people really like take that next step. And I think that's like what you're saying. That's what leads to that growth mindset, because, all of us who own businesses, or if you're working for somebody else right now, I mean, I think most leaders, especially good ones, they want that. They need it to continue to grow. But oftentimes people come from places where maybe somebody either would just shut them down when they had an idea or had feedback, or they would make them think that they could give that feedback, and then they would kind of be repercussions for it. So I think it's pretty amazing that you have that high level communication and people can do that, because I think that's one of the most important things from a cultural standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, ego being the enemy, right?
Yeah.
Great book. But I think just, hey, like I don't have all the answers, and like I might have a good idea, but like if we collectively work on this together, like we will come up with something that is better. And I think that's really helped propel us forward. And bottom up feedback, even from the technicians on, I go back, like a lot of older trade businesses, they don't really care what the feedback is from the field. So they could have guys out there soldering pipe still, which takes a ton of time and, is like a very old school, and it's necessary at times, but now there's pro press, like the technology, you can just press the fitting on, problem solved. It expedites their job. They get home earlier to their families. Stuff like that, where it's like, okay, bottom up feedback, give it to us. Like, yep, that makes sense. Like, let's execute on it. Like, you want organizations that are providing that bottom up feedback, and that's something I've carried forward even from the military to where I am now.
So you just mentioned a book. Is there like one leadership? I mean, there's a lot of books on leadership, and there's a lot of amazing ones these days. Is there one that has maybe had more of an impact on you, or one that maybe you would recommend others check out?
Yeah, there's a military one, The Mission, The Men and Me, by this Delta Force commander, Blabber. And it talks just about that, about taking, bottom up feedback from the field just to have better decision-making process. And then, like, as you think about the buckets, like, there's the mission, there's the thing I need to achieve. There's the men, like the folks who are going to execute on it. And then there's me. And like just being able to assess those buckets, like I have to complete the mission, I have to complete the task. Like, how am I going to communicate that to the team, translate it to the team to like get their buy-in? Like, I could just sit there and say, like, this is what we need to do, this is how we're going to do it. Or I can get some of that bottom-up feedback, get them bought into it, get them believing in it. We kind of co-create on that plan. There's going to be times where you have to say, like, no, we absolutely have to do this. This is critical. We can't skip this step. But like getting that feedback, getting that buy-in is just going to make everything, run a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it sounds like a book on change management, basically. It's leadership / change management. So I guess to kind of finish things up here, seems like you've given a lot of great advice, and probably as a result of being given a lot of great advice throughout your career, throughout your time in the military. What do you think is the single most important piece of advice you received, and who gave it to you? And just maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that maybe the greatest piece of advice, and like this is not very inspiring or anything like that.
That's okay.
Is really just be yourself. Like at the end of the day, I think some folks get caught up in whether they're aspiring to be a leader, they're in management positions. They start like being someone who they're not. Like they read about it in a book and they're trying to emulate this thing, or they saw somebody else do it and they're trying to do it, but it's not really authentic to who they are or how they want to lead. So just be true to yourself, be who you are, be comfortable with that. And it's actually a lot harder to do that. Like as you step into different leadership positions, like I think folks always think, hey, the leader has it figured out. But like every day this business grows, like I am leading an organization that is bigger than any organization I've led, right? And like I hope that it continues to do that, like continues to grow and it's different. It's like I don't have it all figured out. And instead of faking the funk or trying to be something that you're not, just be yourself, be authentic, and know when you know the answer and know when you need to reach out and ask for help. And that advice probably came from my wife, before any job, or like before I took any unit, any anxiety that I had about like, hey, like this is going to be different. Like, am I ready for this? Like, hey, like you're ready for it. Just be yourself. And you'll be good to go.
Excellent advice. Well, Brandon, I really appreciate your time today. This has been an awesome conversation. I think a lot of people will take a lot away from it. So thanks again for being willing to do this with me.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Angles. If this episode made you think, smile, or see something in a new way, follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a review and share it with friends. You can also follow us on social media. Angles is produced by Brett Tuttle. I'm John Richmond. See you next time.